Hello and welcome everybody to Mystical Awakenings.
Hi everybody.
With Deb and Arjay. We're so happy to be here and we're happy to be on KGRA. We love it here. This is our online home. We have an amazing guest. I don't want to waste a lot of time tonight because she's phenomenal. We are so blessed to be friends with this woman and do other shows with her. Bill Konklowski, state director of Michigan MUFON, kind of dropped her name in my lap, I don't know, about 5 years ago.
Was that long, huh?
Yeah. And he said, you should look into this woman. I think she'd be a good fit at the Michigan UFO contact event. And I said, yeah, I will. So I kind of started, looking her up. And the more I saw, the more I totally fell in love with this woman. She is a dear friend, an amazing person, and one heck of an experiencer.
Absolutely. So without further ado,
that's a new name.
That's a new name. Delu.
Debbie Delu. How are you?
As they talk with Deb Kauble about her experiences in a new hit documentary, UFOs Investigating the Unknown, which was on a couple of weeks ago, by the way. Deb was also a co-panelist on the Voices of Contact with us and Mary Bassett and Dana Stricker and some other guests we usually have in there, Michael Carter. Deborah Jordan Kauble was the central figure. She was known as Kathy Davis in Bud Hopkins' international bestseller, Intruders, Their Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods, which was in Indiana. And in 1992, CBS miniseries of the same name was made. In 1994, she co-authored with her sister, Kathy Mitchell, Abducted, the story of the intruders continues. In August 2021, Deborah's second book, Extraordinary Contact, Life Beyond Intruders, was published and is available at most online booksellers, including Amazon, Books A Million, and Barnes & Noble. She is a former Indiana MUFON investigator, co-founded her own paranormal group, Paranormal Underground, and along with co-founder Greg Kauble, co-hosts the Midwest Paratalk Radio, and is also co-host a popular podcast, Voices of Contact. She is currently appearing on season 2 of National Geographic UFO Investigating the Unknown, episodes 4 and 5, also streamable on Disney and Hulu. She spends most of her time behind the scenes, lending support to other experiencers and working toward moving the stigma attached to reporting events. Let's welcome our friend, Deb Kauble.
Hey, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been busy.
Yes, you've had a really busy life.
Yeah.
You really have.
Also, the last few years, I've been adminning the CERO, CERO, Midwest Experiencer Support Group page.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a member of that, and it's phenomenal. It's so nice to be able to go someplace online.
See, I can't keep up with you ladies, I'll tell you.
And connect, because he doesn't accept anything. He doesn't, yeah.
No, you mean that, let's back that up. I accept a lot of things, but I just don't accept
not on Facebook invites, yeah. But the best thing about that group is everybody that comes there has been through what you have been through or what I have been through. We're all experiencers. So
yeah, and they're all various stages of the experiencer. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's people that's been lifelong experiencers that are our age, and they're hanging with they're doing it. They're doing better at like us. And then there's people, newer folks, people that are just realizing and waking up to what's been going on, and they're struggling a little bit. So it's nice for them to have some more seasoned, experiencers to kind of help them along. Kind of, it reminds me of like when I first met Bud. One of the first things he did was hook me up with a buddy, like the buddy system. This gal was a little older than me and had been more aware of her experiences for longer. And so he gave me her phone number with her, permission. And then I eventually met her, and she's like, you call me anytime you want, anytime, day or night, if you're anxious or something, you want to talk about something. And I did a couple times, bless her heart. And she was always right there. So, I mean, it's helpful to have somebody
Right.
to,
Yeah.
So, and for our audience is not aware of what Deb had, her experiences, you can definitely watch this new series that just came up, episode 4 and 5, and she explains everything in there. And this took place back in the late 70s, early 80s, Deb?
My event, the one that they focus on in the episode, it was June 30th, 1983.
Okay.
So it was a long time ago.
Mhm.
Right. Now, was anybody doing what Bud was doing back then before Bud? Was anyone? Not really, huh?
I don't know. I didn't really know about what he did,
Right.
I mean, I didn't know there were people out there that did what he did when I met him. So I'm not sure who was all out there doing it still. There were a few people, but I'm sure not nearly as many as there are today.
Right.
I mean, me and Greg started podcasting like 15 years ago, and we used to use Skype and then upload it to Beanpod or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there were like maybe 10 paranormal podcasts on all of the internet. Now there's like 80 million bajillions. So.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Bud Hopkins, though, was so important in your thousands of people's lives, to be honest with you, as an experiencer. I have to say, even, I never got to meet Bud, but being able to read his books, hear the stories, and know other people out there went through this similar experiences helped me tremendously. So I love the story of how you hooked up with Bud. So if you could tell that real quick, that would be so cool.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, after the June 30, 83 event, and I began to realize, once I saw the mark in the yard and I began to realize something was definitely amiss, I had picked up books in the library in the past. And a few months before that happened, I had picked a book up called Missing Time that Bud had written.
Yeah.
And I never really fully read the whole book. Even to this day, I haven't. But in the back of the book, I did see where there was an address you could write to the guy if you thought you had an experience like this, right? So I went back to the library after, a few weeks of remembering stuff, things coming back. And I got the address and I wrote him this 14-page letter, took a bunch of Polaroid pictures of the mark that was in the yard. And in the letter, I started out telling him about an experience my older sister had in 65, because I just felt too weird I felt like what happened to me that night a few weeks ago was just so weird, and I was still grappling with all of it, and I'm like, I know Kathy saw a UFO. I'm going to write about her first. And then I'll be like, oh, by the way, this happened. And then bam, all these photos fall out of this,
Right.
So anyway, he eventually mom mailed the letter for me. And then he called, and it was, from that point on, it was, like a 2 or 3 year investigation. And during the course of our, this is 40 some years ago, we didn't have the internet,
Right.
or cell phones even, it was snail mail and strategically placed long distance calls after 6 p.m. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but after a few phone calls and a couple letters, we decided that I would come to New York, and I sold my washer and dryer that I had in storage to, oh, look, my buddy Greg is here.
Wondered if you'd pick up on that. Hey, Greg, glad you're here.
So I sold my washer and dryer to get the money to go, and I went. And on the way there, I had this massive panic attack because I was really struggling with anxiety and panic attacks by the time I got to him. And I I'd been having anxiety for years before that. This certainly made it worse. But so I remember getting off the bus. He picked me up at the bus station in New York City, and there he stood there with a big smile on his face. On the way there, I got to thinking, what are you doing? I was a 23-year-old single mom,
Right.
Going somewhere I'd never been. I had this fear of getting lost, and I never really traveled by myself before. So the fact I got on that bus and went all the way to the big city of New York.
It's a big place, yeah.
I mean, that was just, I had to be desperate. And I was.
Right.
I was
And you
desperate.
were. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So but halfway there, I'm like, what's wrong with you? You have kids. This guy could be an axe murderer. That's exactly what I thought. You could be going into a trap of you're going to see a guy who wrote a book about UFOs and aliens. What is wrong with you? And I almost, when the bus made a stop somewhere, I almost got off and went back home. But I didn't, and the rest is, history. First thing he did, though, when I got off the bus, took me straight away to a psychiatrist's office. And I never even thought about it, but years and years later, it dawned on me. He probably thought he wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy too.
Right. You didn't have an axe in your hand, yeah?
Yeah. And that's when I met Dr. Aphrodite Clamar, and she hypnotized me that very first day.
Oh,
but
cool.
It was not a hypnotherapy session to dig to find anything.
Right.
I never knew what hypnotherapy was about. Never really thought of it or really, heard of it other than, sideshow stuff. And so she kind of gave me a little education on it, and then she just put me under a light trance, I guess, whatever you want to call it, just so that I could feel what it was like and understand that I'm in control,
right,
and that somebody can't make you do something against your morals and everything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's people's biggest fear.
She was so wonderful about that. And honestly, I slept wonderfully. Even though that night I slept really good because I was, of course, exhausted. It was a 17-hour bus trip.
Right.
Plus all the anxiety and panic and everything, So when I hit that pull-out couch down in his studio that night, I was out like a light.
Yeah.
But it was just a whole unbelievable series of events that led me there, and I wouldn't change any of it now.
Right. And it sounds pretty simple, talking about it now, but I read the book that you put out in 21, and, totally, I felt every word of it, Deb, because what you went through leading up to even finding Bud's address in that book, my heart broke for you. And I understand. I think many people don't realize the trauma that is caused.
Mm-hmm. I was a disaster area. I think I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I didn't think I'd ever had a nervous breakdown before, but I think I had a nervous breakdown. If that to me is what it felt like,
Yeah.
I couldn't function I was worthless for several weeks, maybe a month or a couple months. I just couldn't. I was sitting up all night long, watching my kids, waiting for something, but I didn't know what it was I was waiting for.
That reminds me, I want to get into this. I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to get into something. Your kids, in your book, they were involved in this too, weren't they? They
they don't like to talk. They're grown men now in their 40s, and they don't like to talk about it. I tried to get Robbie to watch my oldest boy to watch the thing, and he goes, "Mom, I don't watch this." I'm like, okay, it traumatized him when they were little. It scared him, and I respect their.
Could you talk about what happened though? Maybe with that one experience you talked about in there, where they saw something go into the closet. Can you talk about that?
Well, they were laying in they woke me up screaming bloody murder, and my mom and I ran in there, and the youngest one, he was still sound asleep, even though the older one was screaming at the top of his lungs.
Wow. And
the younger one was out, sound asleep, but just blood smeared everywhere, all over his face, all over his bed, all on the wall. It was coming out of his nose.
Okay.
And it wasn't the first time he had a bloody nose, but it certainly wasn't like that.
Right.
And my older one he was like stiff as a board. I don't know that he was paralyzed, but I know he was just stiff and shaking and screaming that the little man with the big head had come out of the closet and was trying to take his brother. And my mother and I took my youngest to the emergency room.
Yeah.
And I can remember the doctors like, oh, he poked something up his nose, and they had to cauterize something in his nose. And I said, there is nothing in his room that he could get up there and do that too. And he said, well, he poked his finger in there. He must have scratched it with his fingernail. And I'm like, look at his fat fingernail. I mean, his little fat finger and his little tiny nostril. How is that even a thing, So they ended up cauterizing it, and he still had, a nosebleed every now and then. Now that's my youngest one, and he will talk a little bit more about this stuff than my older one.
Yeah.
That incident there, and just some of the other just little weird things that went on around the house. My oldest son is just, I think it scares him, and he just doesn't want to have. He doesn't
Right.
want to at all.
That's
So I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we've talked a lot on the show, Voices of Contact, and this runs in the family. And of course, this happened to you, your mother and other people.
Well, my mom, which I didn't even realize until Bud came and began the investigation, and we were all sitting around the kitchen table, which is what we did: coffee and cigarettes, kitchen table every night, And Bud always had a little bit of whiskey or something, and we'd all sit around and talk. And he'd ask everybody questions, and he asked my mom one time, "Well, have you ever had any, strange things?" And my mom's like, the only thing she could remember. Now, my mom was adopted, so. Okay. Her memory's a little fuzzy up until she got, adopted. Right. But she can remember as a young child running through the woods and being terrified because she was being chased by a little boy.
Wow.
In her head. Yeah. I never even knew that. She never volunteered to us any of that until Bud came and asked her. And I'm like, what? So. But then, and like I said, I don't know what anything else happened with her. And then, of course, there's my sister. Now I have another sister and a brother. They're younger than me a little bit. I don't know what kind of experiences they may or may not have had. I don't think my younger sister's really ever. My younger sister's psychic. And she, she sees dead people. She's been seeing auras since she was old enough to talk. She's very psychic. She actually does readings for a living, but I don't think she's had any, alien contact, but I don't know. And
right.
And my brother,
you never know.
No. And my brother he wouldn't talk about it for years. And he was in the Air Force for like 8 years,
Oh, okay.
And I asked him when he went to from full-time to part-time and started driving to Wright Pat on the weekends once a month, I said, oh, Wright-Patterson Airport, that's where they keep the UFOs. I said, you ever been to Hangar 18? I think it was what it was called. And he laughed at me and looked at me and said, if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
Right.
You're an idiot.
Right.
Shut up. But the thing was, my brother the whole subject made him very uncomfortable. And he did not like talking about it. And he did not like to talk to Bud when Bud came. But my mom, who saved things from when we were kids, whips out some school paper from my brother when he, homework he had when he was in elementary school that she saved. And in the margins where he had doodled, he had drawn little alien heads with big black eyes. And this was in the 60s, and he was a little kid in like elementary school. And my mom pulled those out and showed Bud. And I'm like, damn, I didn't know those existed either.
Yeah. But you had an experience though with your mom, didn't you, at the house where you both saw a light or something, right?
Oh yeah, it was the following year, and I think it was in April of '84. Okay. I had been piddling around, and it was late at night, and for some reason or other, I decided I needed to go to this all-night convenience store and get nail polish remover or some such. I can't even remember something stupid that I shouldn't have done, probably, but I went down there, and then on the way home, I saw this weird looking light coming kind of towards me from the west. Well, we lived pretty, I mean, in the outer suburbs of Indianapolis, which is like, millions of people. It's a big city, even back then. And the airport was in that direction. At first, I thought it was an airplane, but something weird happened with the lights. Like there was 2, and then there was 3, and then it went into 1 or something, and it was getting closer, and I panicked. And I remember stepping on the gas and peeling into the driveway. And I ran out of the car up to the front door, and I hollered at my mom, "Mom, come here. You got to see this, get out here." So my mom ran outside. About the time she got there, this thing had gotten over the house almost. The house was surrounded with trees all the way around,
Right.
There was a clearing above the house. And this thing was like just moving into the clearing. And it was so massive and so low that it filled up the whole clearing above the house. It was huge. And it was silent. I think I could hear like a very low
little hum.
Like a hum or something. But other than that, I mean, as big and close as this thing was, you'd think it'd be roaring, but it was not. And it was black. It was dark out, so the whole thing was black. But then when the lights came on the bottom of it, when it got right under it, you could hear I could hear or I don't know if I was hearing it or feeling it, but it was like and they just all came on. And I saw when the lights came on, I could see like a kind of a tail end to it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was like a boomerang, too big, like or big, wings, like a airplane, but only all big wings.
Yeah. Like a big giant V, right?
Yeah, kind of like big V, and then rounded, and there was like bars of white light that illuminated the edges of the wing part, and then in the center there was a red light up where they met,
right?
And the round part in the middle, and then there was a red light up in there, and it came on, and as soon as the lights came on, I'm looking at my mom. We're both standing on the porch, and my mom is like, "Oh my God, that's so beautiful." And I'm looking at her like, "Are you nuts?" and I did. I said, "What are you?" I said, "You're nuts." I said, And I ran through the house, straight through. She left her on the porch, and because this was moving over the house now, and I went out the back kitchen door to see this thing. And here it comes, just gliding right over the house. And I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, hell no, not again, And I watched this thing, and it goes over by 465 and Shadeland Avenue, right? Which is like just behind the house a little way. And I'm thinking, if it's going to turn, it's got a bank, but it doesn't. It just goes whoop. Like and that. It just does whoop and starts going the other way, back the way it came from, except farther north of me, not going over my house anymore. Probably more going like over towards the speed room or something, headed right back to where it was going. So here my mom and I are thinking, this thing was huge. And it went right over 465 in Indianapolis.
Would you say about like 3 football, 4 football fields, maybe?
Oh,
bigger than that.
I way a lot bigger than that. Yeah, it was huge. I can't even tell you like how many airplanes it would take to make this. It would be
quarter mile, maybe.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking, okay, it went right over 465, which is like the loop around Indianapolis. It's always busy.
Right.
So we're thinking we're going to hear about it on the radio. We're going to see it on the news. Mom, we turn the radio on and start listening to the radio, see if people are going to call in. Nothing. Next morning when we get up, we're drawing. I'm talking about what happened to my mom and me in April of 1984 in Indianapolis.
The personal experience, Red Star.
Yeah, it's a personal experience. Anyway, so the next day, there was nothing in the newspaper, nothing in the on the TV or radio or anything, right? So of course we tell Bud about it because at this point we are in contact with Bud and he's investigating, and he had not been able to get MUFON to be willing to take our case. Once they heard that I may have memories of a non-human intelligence. They didn't want any part of it, and they didn't want having to do with our case. So instead, CUFOS was up in Chicago, and Bud got their phone number, and my mom and I called CUFOS's report line. That might have even been that night. I can't remember for sure because I know I called Bud immediately, and it may have been that night that we called him late. I think we did call late because I was surprised somebody actually answered the phone, and Dr. Hynek's the one that answered the phone.
Oh, did he?
So we spoke to him, and he told us to draw each independently, make a drawing of what we saw, and don't look at each other's drawings. Just do it, and then we look at them after we're done. So we separated ourselves and went to make our drawings, which they're in my book, I think, the drawings that Mom and I made. And then we sent them to him. And we were just stunned that nobody else saw this thing. And it was absolutely huge. And Indianapolis is not a little city, and we did not live in the country, And that was when Dr. Hynek made a comment to my mom that he was beginning to think that maybe not everybody could see these things, because it just didn't make sense that her and I both saw this massive thing for several minutes, not just fleeting, but like floating, drifting. It was not going fast, right over 465. And yet nobody else reported it.
Right.
What is that?
Right.
So yeah, that was something, like my mom reacted totally different than I did, because I panicked and freaked out, and my mom was like, "Oh, that's so beautiful." Okay.
Yeah, we've heard several, even our own experiences, that other people don't see it, or only a handful of people see it. So,
well, yeah, it just depends. Now, what you saw is something that other people have seen for sure.
Yeah.
Been reported. And very large, like you said.
I know that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I expected
back then, yeah,
of reports called in.
Right. And
if you could see where this thing was, when it spun on its axis and then just started going back in the direction that it came, that would have put it right over where 465 intersects with Shaveland Avenue, State Road 100, what they used to call it, which is a very high traffic area at all times, day and night, mostly.
That loop runs what, east and west mainly, or north and south?
The 465 makes a complete circle all the way around Indianapolis. If you miss your exit when you're on 465, just keep driving.
I've been there.
Around it again.
Come back.
Yeah, I've been there. So, but okay. So this thing was, you were living in the southwest, northeast part of town. What?
We were southeast of Indianapolis, on the southeast side of Indy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So many people over the years, I have overheard conversations at places, especially back in the 90s when it was more well known. Mm-hmm. People were like, everybody thought they knew where Copley Woods was. And I would overhear conversations and I would just laugh because nobody was right. Copley Woods was a pseudonym. As far as I know, it doesn't exist in Indianapolis. I would just laugh. I'm like,
so you're saying that Copley Woods does not exist?
Copley Woods is a pseudonym.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's 40 some years later, but it was the southeast side of Indianapolis, and it was not very far out from a very popular part of Indianapolis called Irvington, and Old Irvington. So,
well, things got hairy enough without, had Bud put the exact proper location in his
everything
book.
In the book was pseudonyms, all of our names and the logo. Yeah, because what was first of all, it was a different time. It was 40 some years ago, and people didn't look upon it as bad as you may think it is now.
Yeah.
40 years ago, it was way worse.
Exactly.
And before the book was even written, so before the mainstream public knew about the story, but investigators had probably gotten wind of it, through the grapevine.
Right.
We had people show up in our backyard a couple of different times that would jump out and take pictures of the mark in the yard and then drive off. And then one time we got a phone call. We had been gone of the day. We got home in the afternoon, and our neighbor to the north of us, who was one of the witnesses of that night, called and said, "Hey, did you know that there was a guy in your backyard taking stuff off of that mark?" And we're like, "No, we weren't home. We did." She goes, "So you weren't expecting anybody?" And she's like, my mom was like, "No." And this a man in a black sedan carrying a big briefcase, wearing a suit, came out and took junk out of the mark and then left. We didn't know anything about it. The neighbor was the one who witnessed that.
And they were there when you weren't there, right?
Huh?
They were there when you weren't there.
The neighbor that witnessed the guy, yeah, she actually was one of the witnesses of that night who saw the bright flash from the backyard. And
well, I mean, the guy that showed up, he knew you guys were gone, didn't he?
I guess well, maybe he did, because we weren't there. And
yeah,
because if he'd have come out and dragged a big suitcase out in the backyard, I promise you, my dad would have had something to say about that.
Right.
So,
right. So did you ever end up hearing anything about samples being taken or the results?
Nope. Now, I took samples. I took them for myself, and I took them for Bud. And Bud sent some of it off to a laboratory. And the results of the laboratory results are actually published in Intruders. I cannot remember what they said, but I know it had to be baked at a certain ridiculously high temperature for a ridiculously long amount of hours to be so dehydrated, and that there wasn't any life in the dirt.
Right.
I did my own test of my own. I took some control samples, what I called it, just regular dirt from another part of the yard, and put it in a cup. And then I chunked up a piece of the dirt that was in the mark and put it in a cup. And I filled them both with water, the same equal amount. And I left it set downstairs in the basement for 24 hours. And when I went back down there, the lump of dirt I got from the regular part of the yard was just a little slushy mud. But the lump of dirt I got from the mark in the yard was still exactly the way it was when I put it in the water. And it was still rock hard and would not absorb water. And that mark, the first year after that happened, this happened in July, the end of July. But that following early winter, when we got our first snows, snow would melt off of that mark.
It would stay there. Just see the mark.
It would just, the mark would just come up to the snow, and you could see it. The snow would just roll off of it. This soil absolutely would not accept any kind of moisture whatsoever, even months later. So
wow.
It took several years for it to actually heal up, and the grass that did grow back eventually looked all different than the grass in the rest of the yard. It was darker and thicker, and the blades were a little bigger, and it was like that for several years.
So, we've talked a lot about what the physical evidence and all that, but, I before we get out of here, I would like to talk about you personally, and why do you think this was happening to you, and who were you dealing with?
That's a $64,000.
I know.
Right. Let me just say right now, these are my opinions, because I have no proof of anything other than, what I have proof of, like the mark in the yard, the witnesses, some of the physical damage was done to the dog, to myself, to the plant life, everything like that.
But under some hypnosis, your hypnosis, you discovered some things, right?
I remembered some things without the aid of hypnosis.
Okay.
And then hypnosis, I did have probably 5 sessions. I'm thinking I maybe had 5 sessions with Bud over the whole several years, because you got to remember, he lived in New York and I lived in Indiana. Neither one of us was loaded, and it wasn't cheap to travel.
But he came to your place a couple times.
He did come to our house a couple times, and I went to New York a couple of times, and then the rest was like handwriting and letters and phone calls and whatnot. But in the beginning, when I first realized that something strange was going on, and it was something weird was happening to me, and something weird had happened to me, you know, for a lot of my life. Not, you know, when I was a teenager and everything, I had weird stuff happen with my best friend. Well, I had weird stuff happen with her and her family. And when I began to realize all this, and I don't know, the June 30, 83 incident was like the mid mark of weirdness, but it was like the turning point. And it was like something reached down from the universe and slapped me awake in that yard that night, you know. Or I said one time, I felt like the old me died and the new me was born. And from that point on, you know, like I said, I thought I had a nervous breakdown, and I was doing all kinds of weird stuff. I was having lucid dreams and getting, well, people call them downloads now. Back in the day, I didn't know what the hell it was.
Right,
I just would get stuff in my head, and I'd have to write it down, or it wouldn't leave me alone, you know. So, and now I call them lucid dreams. Basically, I still do that, but not, God, I was doing it like every day for a whole year. It was multiple times a day. It was unnerving and made me crazy. But I feel like now part of it was to even the scary stuff that I went through, and the traumatic stuff. It was to jar something awake in me, you know. I sometimes think about how a parent takes their baby to go get their vaccines, and the baby screams and cries, and it hurts and it's scary. But we all as adults know that it's, you know, it's good for them, keep them from getting sick and dying. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's the same analogy in my mind I had that with them, and that whatever trauma or injury I may have incurred during that contact was inadvertent, because I don't think it was malicious anyway, you know. Right. And I was able to overcome it and grow through it. And I started getting thoughts in my head of, oh my God, that something big is coming, and I have something important to do, and I have no idea what it is, but I got to be careful. I got to pay attention. I'll know it when I see it, you know. And I could just feel something coming. And I was saying that for like 20 years, you know. And I feel like seeing this whole disclosure thing that's starting to happen with the government, right, is not something I ever dreamed that I would see. Right. And while I don't think the government is going to be able to control it, right, and even though they want to, right, but I think it's reached the point where they don't have any choice. Right. They gotta come out and start talking, because it's a cover your ass kind of deal, right?
Mm-hmm. They know what's going to happen.
Yeah, because they've been hiding stuff for a long time. So right. But I feel like it's maybe like an evolutionary step for humanity, you know, and that we're about to realize that we are part of a huge galactic universe. Right. And not just galactic, but I mean, I feel like there's dimensions, there's interdimensional too, yes. There's different life all around us. I don't know how many times you probably heard me say, I feel like I'm a tube type radio in a Dolby Digital surround sound world. You know, there's all kind of stuff going on around me right now. Right. Like Wi-Fi signals galore, all of them are shooting through me, but I don't know they're there. But just because I don't perceive them doesn't mean they're not real. Right. My computer receives it because that's what it's made to do. Right. My brain's not made to receive certain things, and our brains are like all this other stuff going on around us. Most of us aren't wired for that. But somehow I feel like in my early contact, I got rewired. Mm-hmm. I mean, not that everybody else has that capacity in them, but I just got mine jump started. You know, mm-hmm. I would say I got a new wire harness in there. You know what I mean? I used to repair circuit boards. So that's how my brain works. Okay.
That's a good analogy. It's a good analogy.
But you know what? Everybody's got it in them. And they're going to start realizing that. Yeah. And they're going to start realizing their place and their potential, and it might be overwhelming and too much for some people.
Right.
But I feel like it's my job to say, look, I've had these weird experiences. I know I sound crazy. I'm not here to try to make you believe me,
Right.
but I'm here to tell you, I know you've had weird experiences too.
Right.
You know, I think everybody walking the face of the earth has. Either you, if you say you haven't, you're either lying to yourself or you're not paying attention, because it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
and so I feel like I'm supposed to be helping people to not be afraid. Bottom
Agreed.
line, keep your
Agreed.
mind open and don't be afraid.
Right.
This is going to be a brave new world if you can take it.
Yeah.
You know, if you can handle it, and if you need help, there's people like me and you guys that will help us. You know, and I know it sounds crazy. I know it does, but just wait and see. I mean, the whole drone situation. I don't care who they're from or what they're doing or what was going on. I mean, I got feelings and ideas.
Yeah.
But the bigger picture for me is that it made a whole bunch of people look up.
Right.
Yep.
And it made a whole bunch of people suddenly open their mind to the possibility that aliens might actually be here.
Right.
You know?
Right. And that might have been the reason they did it. You know?
In the bigger picture, I think things happen in layers. I think that the drone owners are seeing it how they did it and why they did it. And then there's another layer, and then there's another layer. And I'm up here in this other layer that says, you made people look up.
Yes.
Good job.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with it. I just feel like we're about to be I don't know. We're about to be welcomed.
Welcomed and you know, open to the greater truths of life and the greater possibilities of life. And so it's really, I mean, I'm excited, you know. I'm 69 years old, and you can hurry it up a little bit.
I know. Well, I'll be 66 in a couple of weeks.
So you know, so
I know.
don't take your time, you know, just.
Yeah. Well, look, I never ever in a million years dreamed that we'd come as far as we did.
Right.
And in the bigger picture and in the bigger scheme of things, that was pretty quick. So,
right.
You know, I'm happy, I'm thankful to be a tiny part of it. You know, I just hope I can live long enough to see it on this side, but I know wherever I go, I'll know it and I'll see it, because I don't believe in death.
Right,
the way people think.
That's
another thing. I want people to realize, I'm trying to wake people up to understand what they are.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
How magnificent and powerful you are as a human being and what you're capable of.
Yeah.
All you got to do is believe
on a physical and spiritual level.
And you will.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not telling you to believe in any God or any religion. I'm just telling you believe in yourself.
Right.
And trust your voice within. Because it's there for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. And we do that a lot on the show. So that's amazing stuff. I mean, and you know, us doing the show, the other show, the Voice of Contact, you know, we get into some discussions like that big time. So it's just, I agree, like what Christy said, we were born for these times, I believe.
Yes.
We're here for that reason, to be a part of this. And it's amazing, because once it just goes full blown out, I mean, once we just all realize it, most of us anyway, that our lives are going to be different, and
and there'll be no going back.
No, and it'll be in a great way. I mean, it'll be like you said, a whole new frontier. You know?
But I have to remember that for some people, and I was one of those people.
Right.
Even good change is scary.
Yeah.
Any change at all is difficult for people.
Yeah.
some people to have to deal with.
So what do we fear? So, we fear what we don't understand.
And that's a part of all of, you know, that's a part of why I do what I do, you know, to help people to just, you know, it's the person that can adjust and adapt to changing environment and situations that will thrive, not just survive, but thrive.
Right.
You know,
And it's so important what you do, Deb. You know, we say it all the time on the Voice of Contact that, you know, our voices need to be out there. We need to normalize this somewhat because it is what
What's going on?
our reality is.
and I'll tell you what, experiencer, and I'm thankful for Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal and their article in the Times in 17, and how it just pulled the trigger on all of this to just come out. I'm thankful for all of the whistleblowers who have stood before Congress and testified. I'm thankful for all of that, all of the pilots and the military people who have come forward and said what they saw and everything. I'm thankful and grateful to each and every one of them, but the experiencer has an important place in this narrative.
Right.
Very important.
This narrative that, I mean, they're right, you know, I understand that national security is a good way to get money. I get that. Okay.
Right.
You know, to make things scary and, you know, all that. But look,
Right.
honestly, I feel like our airplanes in the skies are more of a threat to us than UFOs because they can get out of the way real quick, you know?
Yeah.
But I get it. That's how you get money, to get more research and do more things. I understand that. But this thing that they're about to disclose goes way beyond nuts and bolts. This goes way beyond that. I feel that it goes, this is about the very essence of what we are and the consciousness that we are and where we're all connected. I fully and truly believe that 100%. And I have for 20 some years and been running my mouth about it to anybody who would look at me and listen. So they're going to need us.
Yeah.
Because we are already, we got one foot in the door. I mean, we're not there, but we got a foot in the door. So they need us. And we needed them. They got mainstream people to say, hey, okay, this UFOs, this thing that I was just in, UFOs Investigating the Unknown, I was so proud to have been a small part of it and to be with all of those amazing people. And the way they laid this out methodically and gently to bring forth to the general public the whole idea of abductions in a sane and calm and rational way. I was so proud to be a tiny little part of it. And I was so thankful to have been able to being given that opportunity, because all the times I did all the other shows that were like clinkers and sucky and all the podcasts and things I've done over the years, it's just so that I could reach as many ears that could hear me, you know, that, and this, I feel like that series is really going to make a big difference for everyone in the long run. And I'm just so pleased at how they laid it all out. The people, the production company is absolutely fantastic, brilliant. And they have to, you can't just dump all this stuff on the general public, because everybody's going to go, oh, hell no, them people are crazy. I saw a review that somebody wrote right off the bat, and it made me, I got goosebumps, because they said, you know, I used to think people that said they were abducted by aliens was crazy and it was just a bunch of shit. But now I'm not so sure. And I thought, thank you, Jesus. I mean, that was everything right there. And that is what it needed to be.
Right.
That is
opening minds.
And I can't wait till all these imaginary lines we have in the sky, my space, your space, is gone. You know, and we're not, we become a planet, you know, and all together. And there are, you know, our concentration is on, like you said, our galactic family out here.
Yeah,
and,
we're part of a bigger life force, you know, that our individualness is an illusion.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a necessary one, because we can't experience the things we need to experience to grow. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But-
it's okay to be unique, but
it's still, you know,
together.
it comes a time when you have to
Yeah.
shed that skin so
Right,
that you can
Right.
grow, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's very important to realize that we are all connected. We are all one, but also to realize that it takes many atoms to form one body. So, that's saying that even though we are all connected, we're individuals coming together to make that connection.
Mhm. And we
With
each bring
all that
something
there is.
unique. We
Yeah, to
bring
the table.
something
Mhm.
unique back,
Yeah.
you know?
That's what it's all about. That's what makes the universe go around, you know. So
I found this interesting. You do end sounding crazy because they can't fathom the truth. It's so far off from what they know.
Yeah.
And what we know is what we've been told, what we see with the human eyes. What it
But
doesn't
never
mean-
underestimate the power of a seed, though.
right.
Okay. I may say
Absolutely.
something and somebody might hear it and think that 99% of it is batshit crazy stuff. But
Yeah.
1% of it might make them stop for a minute.
Mhm.
Like I said, never sometimes I used to call myself Johnny Appleseed of evolution. Never underestimate the power of planting that seed. It could set somebody off on their journey.
Just go look at one of them giant redwoods.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep a little seed.
Ah,
Well, we're getting to
down to a few minutes.
down
here.
to about 2 minutes, minute and a half. So
There's so many things I wanted to talk about, so we're going to have to.
Oh, well, hell, you know where I live. I can come back anytime.
Oh, yeah, we'll be seeing you for sure,
Yeah.
and we'll be doing the Voices of Contact together.
Yeah.
But what you do, Deb, and what you put out there for everybody is so important. So I personally want to thank you and say bless you to you for being a brave 23-year-old to go through all that you went through. And I know it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And you're still out there talking and helping and wide open to experiencers. So bless you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So important.
Sometimes I don't know whether it's brave or crazy, but
Yeah.
either
And,
one gets the job done. So
your last book can be found where?
And you can get it on Amazon. And I'm also told you can find it at most all online booksellers like Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, other places like that. It's pretty easy to find. So, and you can also go to my website and you can shoot me off a message and I can get one to you myself also. The website is www.debshome.com, and Greg is in there laughing at me now, probably saying nobody says www anymore.
They don't, but that's okay.
Okay, so we're going to see you probably next week for sure.
Yep, for sure.
And we appreciate you coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And you have to say what?
I have to say, I love you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you especially to Deb. Everybody have a fantastic week. And until we meet again, may all of your awakenings be mystical.
Good night, everybody. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you. Good night.